am just another kayaker, just another person who after so many years is still in awe of this river. Because a journey through this river is a journey through New Zealand's best kept secrets. And this is my effort to share them. Carefully tucked between two eastern mountain ranges of the South Island of New Zealand is one of the longest flowing rivers of the country. Clarence flows parallel to the Pacific Ocean between the seaward and the inland Kaikora Ranges for about 200 kilometres and holds in its arms a country that is rugged, inhospitable and starkly beautiful, only to be experienced by those who are willing to live its life for a few days. It is the put-in at Hanmer Springs in the summer of 2004. Along with the friends with whom I usually kayak are some special people I've invited for the first time. Alan Mark, Chuck Landis with his wife Caroline, on their first ever rafting trip with their professional raft guide, Bridget. Hi. Boarding on what is to become their only means of transport for the next 5 days. Chuck Landis, an award-winning geologist, is here to explore what he believes to be the most varied geology of New Zealand. Alan Mark, an accomplished botanist and New Zealand's icon for conservation. Rafting and kayaking are of course very different experiences. What a close encounter with a boulder is for a small boat is just a little knock for the big one. But unlike kayaking, rafting is not always about being inside the raft. The Kaikora Ranges dominate the northeast of the South Island. Their very height and steepness, along with the dry inland climate, combine to give Kaikora its distinct character.
We've been following the Clarence River, which is deeply incised along, mainly along fault zones, into very old sandstones known as greywacke. And these are about 100 million years old, and they're very strongly bedded, so that you find interbedded fine sand and mud, and fine sand and mud. And the fine sand tends to weather to give a white color, and the mud tends to weather to give a black color. And it ends up looking like a zebra. And they're all dipping very steeply, which reflects the collision of the seafloor and the collision with New Zealand later on. And there are several other things that are very interesting, including the way the river has eroded down through the sandstones and cut extremely deep gorges, especially the meandering or snake-like gorges or S-bends, where the river has cut down so deeply right into the greywacke rocks. But these are really new mountains, and they are going up today. And they're some of the most active mountains in the world, probably. And they're right at the margin of a plate, and they're rising up 5 or 10 millimeters a year, really rapidly in a geological sense. And because they're going up so fast, the river keeps cutting down at the same rate. And so as the river cuts down as fast as the mountains go up, you develop these very deep gorges.
As the mountain ranges change from older 100-million-year-old greywacke to newer, about 25-million-year-old volcanic and sedimentary, they appear steeper and more dramatic down the course of the river. And the forest cover changes magically. From alpine tussocks to the sea, from dry shrubland to a mosaic of forest, a journey sprinkled with surprises is what I call the Clarence.
Woohoo! Spaniard. We don't need a Spaniard up here, do you? And left back, right forward. Stop.
It's a very interesting sequence as you come down from the upper river with the Acheron Junction where we got into the river down to now quite close to the coast. Matai Flats, I think, says it all. We started in very dry country, mostly grassland, some shrubs, mostly exotics though, sweetbriar, some gorse and broom, quite a lot of broom, but matagari and some native coprosmas, but mostly grassland, pretty depleted grassland. And then you came down into the middle sections, and even though you're running parallel with the coast, you get quite interesting changes as you go down the river, and the diversity increases. Quite a lot of Carnica shrubland all the way to down, little remnants of totara forest where fire hasn't been able to get to the forest because of eroding surrounding gullies of scree. So the totara is in the places where it's been free from fire, and it's growing on the most amazing variety of sites, from the greywacke country to quite alkaline limestone. So it's a rapidly changing situation, a mosaic, if you like, a patchwork of native species, forest, shrubland and grassland. But I suppose the distinctive feature of the trip is the Marlborough rock daisy, which grows in the most amazing rock walls where you'd swear there was no room for any plants to grow. The Marlborough rock daisy is right on every rock wall.
The Clarence is the only river in New Zealand that offers a multi-day rafting and kayaking experience of moderate difficulty. This makes the trip both exciting and challenging.
There's a rock like this here, the raft will come up sideways and it rides up, and then it either sticks on the rock or goes over. Tilt the raft, and believe it or not, it works. We will just go with it, go with the water.
And those survival techniques are mostly simple. Surviving is often not.
Hold on! Where's the rock? It must be under here. Right to the back of the boat. Right to the back.
Oh, hold it!
Okay, everybody. Try and hold on to everything and everyone.
It's not just the beauty of the Clarence that can take your breath away. Clarence is not just a river. It's the one and only gateway into this remote, wild and uniquely rugged country. Unfortunately, not one of the 14 national parks in New Zealand protect the kind of drylands present here. Maybe it's time to take action.
It is a time of transition for the country here in the Kaikoras, with National Park being proposed for the 80,000 hectares that's currently with the Department of Conservation. Our view of that is that the National Park values are here. There's some very special plants and animals, what's known as a hotspot of biodiversity, southern Marlborough and the Kaikora Ranges generally, and whether the National Park proposal proceeds or not, clearly the Department of Conservation is going to be acquiring more land for its management, but clearly there's a lot more to be known about the Kaikoras, and it's an open invitation to anybody for future work to put the time and effort in here and find out more about this fascinating area.
Cutting through deep gorges of seaward Kaikoras that grew much later than the inlands, the Clarence finally bends southeast to join the sea, turning the last bit of valley into highly regenerating thick podocarp forest, a perfect culmination of a fascinating journey before meeting the Pacific Ocean.
I suppose a child would say it just doesn't seem fair. No one's speaking for the river. No one needs to speak for the mountains. It's as though they're very bulk, and their majesty is a symbolism in itself. It's sacred, we can't touch it. And yet somehow rivers aren't valued in the same way. They don't seem to have the same meaning. And it just seems to me that the Clarence should be valued for its own sake and its own place in New Zealand, and for the life forms on it and the mountains and scenery around it. So I'd like it to have some status that we as humans could gift the river, that would preserve it and just let it be. Let it be the peaceful, slow, low river in drought, and the big, roaring, stormy river in the floods, just the way it is.